Welcome to FU Stigma Counseling Chats with Dr. Lott. Today I want to talk to you about my personal theory of choice, rational and emotive behavioral therapy. Rational emotive behavioral therapy is my theory of choice. It's something that I use with clients, but it's also something that I use as a lifestyle. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. Specifically, I want to talk about the 12 irrational beliefs. So in order to get a better understanding of the 12 irrational beliefs, I want to give you a little bit of a case study so that we can then apply the 12 irrational beliefs to the case study. So I'm going to read this case study to you. Bear with me. We're going to use the name Brenda as a pseudonym for a client that I've worked with in the past. So Brenda is a 33-year-old Caucasian female. She's in a relationship with her boyfriend. She loves him and hopes to one day marry him. Although things are going well, she is not sure if her boyfriend is ready to move ahead in their relationship. Brenda often feels threatened or jealous when he has contact with other women, such as co-workers. Brenda's boyfriend is trustworthy and has been honest with her. He's never given her a reason to doubt him. When Brenda falsely accuses her boyfriend of being unfaithful, this tends to create tension and leads to arguments and time apart. How can we help Brenda to better manage her emotions around jealousy, self-esteem in order to be productive in her relationship and demonstrate the things that she's hoping to get from her boyfriend? So, the 12 irrational beliefs. So first of all, irrational beliefs are beliefs that are faulty or illogical in some way. For instance, when we have thoughts about perfectionism, if we think that we have to be perfect all the time in all things, at all times of the day, well, we're a human and we were born flawed. So nobody, unless you're Jesus, is perfect, right? So if you're not able to be perfect, then you're not, because it's unrealistic. Nobody is perfect. There's no way to be a perfect person because we were born flawed. So there's no way to ever meet that expectation. So when we talk about the 12 irrational beliefs, Albert Ellis is the founder of REBT, and he developed 12 irrational beliefs that most people have in common. All of us usually have dealt with this in some capacity. Sometimes it's all of the irrational beliefs. Sometimes it's one of the irrational beliefs that sticks with us. Mostly everyone has dealt with irrational beliefs at some point in their lives. They might still be dealing with it now. I know I struggle with them, but I think that the most important thing is if you know what the 12 irrational beliefs are, you're most likely able to pinpoint them and then, challenge them. So I'm hoping that this is helpful. So, irrational belief number 1, the idea that it is a dire necessity for adults to be loved by significant others for almost everything that they do. Now let's think about applying this to Brenda's case. So Brenda, an example of this would be Brenda feels that her boyfriend must love her no matter what. That means no matter what is going on in his world and her world, no matter what she does, he must love her. And she feels like if he doesn't love her, the world is just going to end and it's just unacceptable. We can see that that is irrational. Nobody must do anything. So must is one of those words that Albert Ellis played on. He used words like masturbation and shitting on ourselves. So masturbation, if you listen to the word masturbation, must, M-U-S-T, I must do this, must that. He's saying we shouldn't masturbate. And then with shitting on yourselves, it sounds like shitting on yourselves, but it's shoulding on ourselves, like S-H-O-U-L-D, should. We should do this, we should do that. I must do this, I must do that. Stop shitting on yourself, stop masturbating. He wants you to get rid of that dogmatic thinking, that all or nothing thinking. So that's where some of the language comes in. He was a pretty funny dude. So the antidote to the idea that I must be loved and accepted by almost everything and by everyone that's in my life, is we gotta instead concentrate on our own self-respect, on winning our own approval. And then when we want to win approval, we want it for practical things, not things that are irrational to begin with. So practical things that make sense, that are aligned with reality. And we want to focus on loving people rather than being loved, because we can't control people loving us, but we can control how we respond to other people, thus our loving other people. So Brenda's non-irrational thought could be, I want to be loved by my boyfriend, but if not, that sucks, but I can move on. It's not the end of the world. All right, so irrational belief number 2 is the idea that certain acts are awful or wicked, and that the people who perform such acts should be severely damned. We've thought this before, maybe not to this extreme, but you think that somebody did something to you and you just wish they burned or just go to hell. Well, it's irrational to think that. We have to learn to separate someone's behavior from their person. So maybe they're not an awful person, but what they did was an awful thing for them to do. So if we use our case study of Brenda feels that her boyfriend leaves her. If he leaves her, he should rot in hell because he is wrong for hurting her, and he is an awful person and should be damned. Well, the healthier way of looking at that is, it sucks if he leaves her, and it'll hurt, and yeah, she'll have some disappointing feelings, but that doesn't make him an awful person. Maybe what he did sucked, and maybe what he did was awful, but he's not awful. Really separating that. And I think that it's really encouraging for us to do that as individuals. Like, I hear people say, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm such an ass. Well, how about that was stupid, or that was an asshole thing to do, not I, the person, is stupid. There's a really big difference. So I'm hoping that you can hear that. So Albert says, instead of the idea that certain acts are self-defeating, instead think of this idea that some acts are self-defeating and antisocial, and some people who perform are acting ignorantly or stupidly or selfishly or neurotically, but with help, these people can possibly change. People's poor behaviors do not make them rotten individuals. So there's a difference. Moving on to irrational belief number 3. The idea that it is horrible when things are not the way we like them to be. And goodness, do we know, oftentimes things are not the way we want them to be. I don't care how much planning you do, how much smoozing you do, how much praying you do, or whatever it is that you do to try to put things in motion. It's out of your control. Only thing that's in your control is you. So Brenda feels that if her boyfriend doesn't propose to her within the next month, then this is terrible and she cannot stand it. So she wants to be proposed to, she wants to be with him and make things more official, and irrationally she thinks that if he doesn't do that, then it's terrible and he must not love her if he doesn't do that within the next month. So Albert says, instead, think to yourself, this is too bad, but we will be better off trying to control ourselves and not other people or not other outcomes. He said that we would better try to change or control bad conditions so that they become more satisfactory. And if that's not possible, you have to learn to temporarily accept the situation for what it is. Not like it, but accept it. So Brenda's boyfriend disappointing her is unfortunate, but in time, maybe he'll see the value in marriage. That's another way she can reframe that. And it might not be 100% true, but saying that it's awful and she can't stand it if he doesn't propose and life is no more and things are gonna end is irrational. Okay, we're moving on to the idea that human misery is invariably externally caused and is forced on us by outside people and events. So everything happens to me, basically. And these bad things that happen to me control me, and I am suffering because of everything that keeps happening to me. So an example of this is Brenda feels that she is always the target of people's darts. She is always hurt and mistreated, and there's absolutely nothing she can do about it. Albert said that neurosis is largely caused by the view we take of the unfortunate condition. So it's the way we're looking at things. So I'm not saying that everything is cupcakes and wonderful, but if we don't shift the way we're looking at things and reframe things, then we can stay in that irrational thinking pattern, and it'll just exacerbate that stress and anxiety that you're feeling from that event. So although Brenda is often mistreated, she can think that this is life and move ahead of this. She can focus on positive and less on how others see her. So really reframing how she sees herself in her own light and not how other people see her. I want to just stop and say that these irrational beliefs don't have to be this extreme. I'm using the extreme versions of it. But there's like a spectrum of irrational beliefs. So tapping into that and knowing it is very helpful, so that you can attack it when you do notice it in your own self or in people around you. And I'm also wanting to say that this isn't some sort of theory that says everything's going to be wonderful in the end, or don't indulge or understand or embrace or experience negative emotions. It definitely doesn't say that. It just says don't anxietize it in a way where it is so heightened and so overwhelming that it's out of proportion to reality. That's the difference. Irrational belief number 5, the idea that if something is dangerous or fearsome, we should be terribly upset and endlessly obsess about it. So I'm scared of something, so let me think about it, and just become obsessed with it. So one of Brenda's obsessions or fears is that she's going to be alone. She thinks about ways to keep her relationship intact to the point where she is constantly thinking about how not to mess up. So instead of being present and really valuing the relationship and being involved in a relationship, she's constantly thinking about how to not mess it up. So she misses the point. So Albert Ellis says, one would frankly face their fear and render it non-dangerous, and then when that is not possible, accept the inevitable. Although it would be nice to be in a secure relationship, being alone is not the end of the world, and Brenda can adjust to it. So Albert Ellis is basically saying face your fear, and within reason. So we're not saying if you're afraid of a poisonous snake, go get in a cage with it. That's not what we're saying. But maybe you go to a zoo where it's caged and you can be face to face with it, but still have, caution or whatnot. And that's one that's like superficial. But let's say we're afraid of abandonment. Well, I think a lot of people at the core are afraid to be abandoned, but if you don't indulge in any relationships or have any relationships past the surface, how will you ever know how that feels? You know what I mean? So avoiding something will ultimately make you miss out on maybe an opportunity to get to know something else that maybe you haven't experienced, if that makes sense. So the next irrational belief is the idea that it is easier to avoid than to face life difficulties and responsibilities. So go hide under a rock, don't face anything, be avoidant, and run away from things that challenge you or scare you. Albert Ellis said, Albert Ellis said that we would better do rather than always need to do well, and accept ourselves as quite imperfect creatures who has general human limitations and specific fallibilities. In other words, accept yourself flawed and all, because we are all flawed. Learn to accept it, learn to manage it and deal with it, because no one is perfect. So one of the examples for this irrational belief, Brenda doesn't want to meet her boyfriend in fear of receiving bad news. She then cancels their dinner date. So she is so afraid that he's going to either break up with her or leave her that she just wants to avoid the situation altogether. So a rational way of looking at this is Brenda fears separation from her boyfriend, but she can't control the thoughts and feelings of others. Therefore, she needs to face this difficulty as it is. I think that it's really important to point out that if you avoid things in life, if you avoid situations, like I said, it robs you of the opportunity to have experiences. So, you have to really get in your head and not awfulize or catastrophize situations that aren't at a level 10. Maybe it's a level 8. You know what I mean? Keep it at an 8. Keep it realistic, not at a level 10 where you are so paralyzed by your fear that you do nothing and become avoidant. Rational idea number 7. The idea that we absolutely need something stronger or greater other than ourselves on which to rely. Now, this one got a lot of pushback when it first came out in the 1950s. And the reason why is because they felt that Albert Ellis was disregarding religion, people who believe in God, and that, there's a stronger force other than themselves and they have to rely on it heavily. But that's not what he was saying. Albert was really trying to say that it's better to take risk of thinking and acting less independently. In other words, you can have a higher belief and you can believe in something stronger or greater than yourself, but it should not stop you from living your life or taking risks or doing things that's outside of your comfort zone. And being completely dependent on something else and letting it dictate your behaviors or let it dictate your life is the unhealthy part. So when we look at the case of Brenda feels that she needs her boyfriend because she can't live without him. It might feel like you can't live without somebody, but that's irrational. You can literally live without someone. Will it be without pain? Maybe not. But you can live without them, literally. So Albert says Brenda can come to like being alone and dependent on her own abilities at some point. Meaning, if it's not meant for her to be with this person, or if this person is not around, and this could be from like a breakup, then it is what it is. If it's something like a death, that's a little bit more complicated. It sucks, it hurts. You don't want to live your life without your significant other or that loved one, but life will not end if that person is around. A lot of moms have a hard time with this. Like they say, I can't live without my baby. If they die, I die. You know what I mean? And although it feels that way, if we think about it in a literal sense, you don't die. A part of you might die emotionally, but you don't die. And so he's trying to get you to think about things from a more rational point of view as opposed to straight from the emotional point of view. Irrational idea number 8. The idea that we should be thoroughly competent, intelligent, achieving on all aspects in everything. That means you need to know everything, all the time, at all points of your life, in every stage. I cannot imagine anyone living up to that expectation, but a lot of students and a lot of clients do hold themselves at that regard, and they feel like they have to be that way in everything, and they run themselves mad trying to keep up with that unhealthy, unrealistic expectation. It goes back into perfectionism. So Albert Ellis says that we should learn to accept ourselves, do the very best that we can, and understand that there's no way to know it all, do it all the time in every aspect. To have that expectation, you'll be continually dissatisfied and disappointed. So Brenda believes that she must be perfect, and if she isn't, everything will go wrong. That's the irrational belief. Albert Ellis says Brenda can come to realize that as long as we are alive, there is always room for improvement, and it's a part of the human experience. Well said, Albert. Irrational belief number 9. The idea that because something once strongly affected our lives, it should indefinitely affect it. So Brenda believes that because she had a dysfunctional relationship with her dad, she is doomed to have a dysfunctional relationship with any man in her life, and she feels she cannot change this. Well, Albert Ellis says, instead, we can learn from our past experiences, but not be overly attached to or prejudiced by them. In other words, You keep those experiences with you. They help you become who you are, but they don't define you. They don't create your future. They may have happened to you in the past, but they don't dictate what your future must look like. You can have some control, some element of control over what that looks like. So instead, Brenda can learn to use what she learned from her relationship with her father to shape her relationship with men in a more positive light. So she's using that past experience, but now she's changing it and using it in a more productive, positive light. Irrational belief number 10. The idea that we must have certain and perfect control over things. Well, we talked about that. We can't control anything outside of ourselves. That includes our children, other people, circumstances. There is no way to control anything anybody does other than ourselves and our reaction to what people do to us. So Brenda believes that there must be order and no surprises in life, for she must be prepared for everything. You can't live like that. There's no way to live in complete control all of the time. So instead of this, Albert Ellis says that the world is full of probability and chance, and we can still enjoy life despite this. So Brenda can accept that we cannot foresee what is coming, and helping her get into practice through cognitive homework can help her in this area. So helping her reframe how she's thinking about things, about how she needs to be in control, and also exploring what that control does for her, and seeing there's other ways to meet those needs in other non-maladaptive ways, in other ways that are not dysfunctional or holding her back. Irrational belief number 11. The idea that human happiness can be achieved in inertia and inaction. In other words, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to work. I don't have to lift a finger. Everything is just supposed to happen for me. And all of my goals are supposed to be met without me taking any active role. So Brenda fantasizes that things will be in her favor, and she doesn't have to do anything to put into motion to make this happen. Albert Ellis says that we tend to be happiest when we are vitally absorbed in creative pursuits, or when we are devoting ourselves to people or projects outside of ourselves. So Albert Ellis didn't just say this. This is also Adler who said this. So Adler believed that one of the ways to help with depression and help cure or address some of the symptoms that people were having was to go out and help somebody else, because it feeds you internally and then kind of helps fill that glass for you that might be somewhat empty. So helping others and focusing on your ability to be there for others can be helpful in this idea. And then the last and final irrational belief, and then you might look this up, and it might be 13 irrational beliefs, because someone might have broken down one of the 12 irrational beliefs, but all of these beliefs are easily Googleable. You can find them. The idea that we have virtually no control over our emotions, and we cannot help feeling disturbed about things. So Brenda feels that if she is no longer in her relationship with her boyfriend, she will be absolutely lost. She might feel really sad and devastated, and might go through a period of a few days where it's really hard to keep her head above water. But Albert Ellis says, we have real control over our destructive emotions if we choose to work at changing the masturbatory hypotheses which we often employ to create them. That's a mouthful. In other words, if we learn to get rid of our dogmatic, all or nothing, I must, I need to, I have to, I should, and go to something like I prefer, I hope that, I wish that, it's a very different feeling. I must do this, I have to do this, to I prefer to do this, I hope that this happens. It's a whole different experience. So really changing those core beliefs around how she needs to have control over everything is going to help her be less stressed and put less emphasis on herself, less pressure on herself, and be less critical. So instead, Brenda will see that it is unfortunate but manageable, and she is not lost or broken because her boyfriend left her. So those are the 12 irrational beliefs. I gave you some examples just based off a quick case study that I did on a client. And I'm hoping that those 12 irrational beliefs made sense. Did any of them resonate with you? I know that I used to struggle with the irrational belief of having control over things until I learned, like, this is exhausting. I cannot do this. This must not be how it's supposed to go. And I educated myself. And like I said, REBT is a lifestyle for me. It is how I live my life. It's how I think about the world. It's how I view my clients. So I hope this was helpful. Look up the 12 Irrational Beliefs by Ellis when you get a chance. Think about if any of these stand out to you. I'll link a reference in the description so that you can easily search it up. This has been FU Stigma, Counseling Chats with Dr. Lawton. I'll catch you in the next one.